well, I've noticed this change, but I've also noticed at work this and this.
So you're identifying the changes that you're seeing. So Corey, you've been doing lots of work on site in the mental health first aid space, and something you are noticing coming up is a lot of people feeling like they've got to be a psychologist or they've got to have counselling behind them to be able to have those conversations. What's your take on that?
I've actually been talking about this a lot on site with leaders and just team members in general about how to have a conversation with their mates and with their staff. I think that there's this real fear that I'm going to be responsible for somebody else, and what we actually teach in mental health first aid is that you have their hands on the oars. So the person who is going through their own mental experience is actually responsible for getting themselves out of it, and sometimes they might just need a little bit of guidance and support in that. And that guidance doesn't need to be complicated psychology speak. It actually is a really simple conversation. Instead of asking, are you okay, which is a great question for leading into starting a mental health conversation or generating interest around it, the conversation should start with like, what are you observing in people's lives? And in the mining industry, we actually have this like ability to see patterns. And the pattern might be the guy who gets on the bus first every day is not getting on the bus first. It might be the guy who's not going to the gym, the guy who's going to the wet mess and grabbing his 4 beers and going back to his donga instead of having a few beers with his mates. So if we stick with that pattern of like coming to the wet mess and taking his beers home, the conversation might look like, hey Steve, I noticed that you have been grabbing your beer and heading back to your donga. Like, is everything okay? And initially you might say, well, actually I'm fine. And then how we press on that is a little bit, we'll go, well, I've noticed this change, but I've also noticed at work this and this.
So you're identifying the changes that you're seeing?
Yeah, so just acknowledging that you're seeing a change in someone, and I think that then lets them feel seen. And they may not come back to you in that conversation, but they will come back to you and go, hey, when you asked me about why I'm going back to my donga, I'm actually experiencing some relationship challenge. My teenager's not talking to me, whatever that is, right? And then from there, we don't actually need to like psychoanalyze that. All we need to do is, it's simple as like, well, there's 2 things that we need to do. One is give them space. So silence is this thing that we're scared of, we feel uncomfortable in. So if we sit in that silence quietly, it gives them time to form their thoughts and think about what's going on for them and respond, rather than us trying to fill the space with noise because we're feeling uncomfortable in that. So sit in the discomfort of that.
Yeah, that silence gives them space to think and process, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Like, they need time and space to think and process. And the second thing is, all you really need to say to them is, tell me more, and be fully present to them. And so the combination of silence and tell me more is a really powerful gift that we can give to people, because really people want to tell their story and they want to get it out. And when I've asked people how they feel after they've kind of gone through this process, they always say they feel lighter.
Yeah.
So we're really giving an opportunity for people to unload without us actually taking on the burden of whatever they're going through, right? Being responsible for their mental health.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that we need to do is just ask them, what are the next steps that they can take? So instead of us going, you should, because then we carry all that in our shoulders, right? We ask them, what do you need to do next for your mental health? And if they don't know, that's okay. So then we can make some suggestions. We might go, well, you know, we have an EAP on site, we might have a chaplain, you go to your CGP, which one of those do you...
What's a CGP?
See a GP.
Right, okay, see
So
a GP, yeah.
you can go see a GP, so which one of those do you feel comfortable with?
Yeah.
And then they will go, well, actually, I've got a good relationship with my GP, I'll go see them.
Yes.
And when are you going to do that? I'm going to do it on a Tuesday. Okay, so then I would like put a calendar reminder in my phone so I don't need to think about it. Follow up with Steve on Wednesday morning, say, how did the GP thing go yesterday, mate? And that lets them feel seen and heard. So there's this really simple process for like going through a mental health conversation that doesn't have to be about, I'm the counsellor, I'm the psychologist, and it really gives people an opportunity to start having these conversations which are actually really deep and meaningful but don't need to be complicated.
Yeah, that sounds fair enough. And as I'm listening to what you're saying there, something that I know people will often say, what if they say something, you know, there's something bigger going on in their life, you know, like they might be intentions of self-harm or suicide or those sorts of things? Because a lot of people are very frightened around that too, aren't they?
So I think if the conversation leads down a path where you feel like you're not able to hold the conversation, it's actually really being transparent and going, hey, I'm actually like out of my depth here. I'm not sure how to support you in this, but what we can do is call the mental health emergency response line or lifeline, and we can get you some support here and now. Yeah. So really just owning the fact that this is really big for me and I don't know how to actually support you right now. Yeah. Let's call in some other support.